Today is Saturday, April 11th, 2015. We will take up again that great, amazing, really, sutra, the Sutra of Vimalakirti, the great layman at the time of the Buddha himself. We will take a look actually at chapter 6. We actually skipped that. We went to regarding living beings. We'll go to chapter 6. Regarding living beings was chapter 7. But we'll go to chapter 6 today, which is beyond comprehension. At that time, Shariputra, and again we're reading from the Burton Watson translation from Kumarajiva's Chinese text of around the 6th century or so. At that time, Shariputra, observing that there were no seats in Vimalakirti's room, thought to himself, all these bodhisattvas and major disciples, where are they going to sit? Shariputra is struck with a moment of ordinary reality and ordinary kind of self-centered thinking. Of course, he's thinking about others, all these bodhisattvas and major disciples, where are they going to sit? But he's kind of struck with the fact that Vimalakirti has a very small room. There isn't room for everybody that's come. There isn't room for the whole world. So he thinks in a very ordinary, very logical, straightforward way, how is there going to be room for everybody? Well, this becomes an opportunity, as we'll see, for Vimalakirti himself to reveal what is beyond comprehension. The rich man Vimalakirti, knowing what was in his mind, because he never says it out loud, said to Shariputra, did you come here for the sake of the Dharma, or are you just looking for a place to sit? That's a good question for all of us. Are you just here looking for a nice, quiet place to sit? Or are you here seeking the realization of your own mind, the realization of the way? Or just a comfortable, quiet place where you can sit? What is it that you're looking for? Shariputra says, I came for the Dharma, not for a seat. Shariputra, said Vimalakirti, the seeker of the Dharma doesn't concern himself even about life or limb, much less about a seat. The seeker of the Dharma seeks nothing in the way of form, perception, conception, volition, or consciousness. He seeks nothing in the way of sense realms or sense media. He seeks nothing in the threefold world of desire, form, and formlessness. Of course, that doesn't mean that he doesn't seek or she doesn't seek. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It just means not having a limited goal, but to seek so completely that even the one seeking disappears, burned up, so completely seeking. There's nothing but that seeking, which has no name, the yearning that we all carry. It's for the infinite, not for small goals. So, Shariputra, says Vimalakirti, a seeker of the Dharma does not seek it through attachment or dependence on the Buddha, does not seek it through attachment to the Dharma, does not seek it through attachment to the Sangha. The seeker of the Dharma does not seek it through recognition of suffering, does not seek it through renunciation of attachments. People can get really hung up on that. Oh, I'm doing really well. I've kind of given up stuff that I used to be into. And that is good. Of course it's good. But of course, that is not seeking the Dharma itself. That's a side effect. And we should applaud the side effects, but not get stuck there. Does not seek it through realization of how to end attachments, or through practice of the Dharma itself, or the way rather. Why? Because the Dharma has nothing to do with idle theorizing. To declare that one must recognize suffering, renounce attachments, realize how to reach extinction, that is nirvana, where the passions are blown out. That's what nirvana means, blown out, like a candle in the wind. The things that cause so much grievance, the regrets, the desires, the passions, the agonies that we all go through, the fears, all the results of a sense of separation are blown out, gone. Realize how to reach extinction and practice the way is mere idle theorizing, not seeking the Dharma. Wow, Vimalakirti holds up a very high bar. So much, of course, of what's presented as Dharma teaching is exactly the things that Vimalakirti says, no, that's not it. You have to go beyond it. You have to realize your own mind. You have to awake right where you are, as you are. So he says all this stuff that you can read about in Tricycle. Recognizing suffering, renouncing attachments, realizing how to reach extinction, practicing the way. Vimalakirti, whoa, says is mere idle theorizing, not seeking the Dharma. Holds a very high bar. Shariputra, the Dharma is called tranquil extinction. That is great peace. Extinction of the delusions that make us feel afraid and alone, separate from bugs and trash and stars and clouds, ourselves and other people, even people we love. Tranquil, peaceful, extinction of all that, not destructive extinction whatsoever. But if one strives for birth followed by extinction, says Vimalakirti, this is seeking birth and extinction. This is not seeking the Dharma. The Dharma is called unstained, but if one is stained with the idea of the Dharma or of nirvana, then one is stained with attachment. This is not seeking the Dharma. Very high bar indeed. All the things we think we might get from practice. Vimalakirti is saying, pay attention right where you are, right now. As Hakuin says, this very body, the body of Buddha, this very place, the pure lotus land, how can that possibly be? Vimalakirti says, look, right where you are. Not to the future when one day you have something called nirvana. Right now. The Dharma has no goal of activity, but if one actively pursues the Dharma, one is pursuing a goal, and this is not seeking the Dharma. It's a very sharp blade, Vimalakirti. The Dharma has no goal of activity, but if one actively pursues the Dharma, one is pursuing a goal, and this is not seeking the Dharma. The Dharma knows no picking and choosing, but if one picks and chooses the Dharma, this is picking and choosing, not seeking the Dharma. You know the verses on the faith mind. The great way is not difficult for those who do not pick and choose. There are three koans in Hekiganroku. They go from 57, 58, 59, all about Jiao Chu, which focus again and again on this issue of picking and choosing. And one must be very careful, because to not pick and choose is already to have chosen not picking and choosing. It's very subtle. Don't get caught up in, well, now I won't pick and choose. Well, that's to have picked and chosen. It's much deeper and more subtle than that, and yet completely ordinary and present. So, the Dharma is independent of place, but if one fixes on the idea of place, this is fixation with place, not a seeking of the Dharma. The Dharma is called formless. If one tries to know it through form, this is seeking form, not seeking the Dharma. Again, very high bar, because of course the Dharma is also Buddhas on altars, sutras in books, books of teachings, all these things which have form, Zendos, all these things which have form are also the Dharma. But if we get hooked on them and think that's what it is, then we miss realizing the Dharma this very moment, our own mind. What is it that hears, that sees, that feels, that thinks, that sits, that stands, that turns on lights, turns off lights, brushes teeth, eats when hungry, sleeps when tired? We miss the real Dharma of life itself. This is what Vimalakirti is cautioning about. The Dharma is not something that can be resided in. If one tries to reside in it, this is trying to reside in the Dharma, not seeking the Dharma. The Dharma is not something that can be seen, heard, perceived, or understood. Very important point. Some people think, oh, just if I could just understand this. What if there is nothing to understand? There's just anything we can understand may be very trivial compared to being present, even being present to not understanding. This is reality. So much more than whatever we might understand. So, Vimalakirti again, very sharp blade. If one tries to see, hear, perceive, and understand it, this is trying to see, hear, perceive, and understand the Dharma, not seeking the Dharma. The Dharma is called unconditioned. If one tries to approach it through the conditioned, this is seeking the conditioned, not seeking the Dharma. We can realize the Dharma, awake to the Dharma, which is our own mind and nature. We might never really understand it. So be it. Thereupon Shariputra, if one would be a seeker of the Dharma, one must not seek it in anything at all. That is, one must practice it, not seek it in things. Oh, I'll go to this, I'll go to that, I'll hear this, I'll hear that, I'll read this. Those are all good things. Don't get me wrong. All good things. But Vimalakirti is pointing to what's under all that, which is the desire and the need to practice the Dharma. So he says, if one tries to approach it through the conditioned, this is seeking the conditioned, not seeking the Dharma. And of course, there are times when we do need and want to seek it in the conditioned, because our conditioned world is so disruptive and unhealthy that we might want to seek conditioned things to balance that. Good things, Dharma things, that's fine. But that may not be itself seeking the Dharma, at least not yet, not consciously. But we all go back to it over and over because of the complexities of our world. Still, Vimalakirti upholds, if one would be a seeker of the Dharma, one must not seek it in anything at all. Again, what he's saying is, no, one must practice it right where we are, as we are, not as some special person we might one day be, right as we are, right now. When Vimalakirti spoke these words, 500 heavenly sons gained the purity of the Dharma eye in their perception of conditioned phenomena. And of course, also, again, to avoid seeking would be seeking to avoid. And that would be, again, picking and choosing. So again, Vimalakirti is raising the bar very high, but he's also making very subtle points that we shouldn't fall to one side or the other with. Take him in like listening to poetry, or like listening to words on the breeze, or the breeze making branches clack together in the wind, and the caw of crows, the way you listen to a Teisho, not to cogitate on it, but to just be present in it and with it. That's how we have to take Vimalakirti, because he is really going the limit and pulling the rug out for many of our foundations of ordinary life and practice. At that time, the rich man Vimalakirti said to Manjushri, "You have visited countless, thousands, 10,000s, billions of asamkayas of countries." Some translations say not countries, but worlds. You visited thousands, billions, 10,000s of asamkayas, that is, countless numbers of countries or worlds. What Buddha lands, what world has the finest and most beautiful lion seats? That is, seats of great grandeur, like a lion, a throne shaped like a lion's. Maybe there are lion heads on the arms of it, or maybe at his legs like a lion. Like Manjushri, sitting on a lion is how you feel when you sit on a seat like that. Oh, he says, okay, what worlds, what lands have the finest, most beautiful lion seats, those endowed with the best qualities? Manjushri replied, layman, to the east, the direction of the rising sun, to the east, beyond countries or worlds, numerous as the sands of 36 Ganges rivers, lies a world called Sumeru shape. Mount Sumeru is seen as the center of the universe in Buddhist cosmology. It's like the axis of the whole universe, Mount Sumeru universe. So this world is called Sumeru shape. It is as distant in the direction of the east, beyond countries numerous as the sands of 36 Ganges rivers. Well, the sands of one Ganges river would be innumerable. We're talking about billions. Think of a star-studded sky. Billions of worlds beyond count to the east of our world. Hakuin has a whole section in one of his talks on this one line in the Vimalakirti Sutra. He says this is the most profound line in the entire sutra. I don't know if I agree with that. But Hakuin's point is, why not just one Ganges river? Why 36 Ganges rivers? The sands. Imagine the sands. That's how many worlds. 36 Ganges rivers. The Ganges is a huge river. Sands of all those rivers. That's the number of worlds to the east is this Sumeru shape. Interestingly, if you look at current understanding of our galaxy, we call it the Milky Way. We're at one of the outer arms. There seem to be 3 arms to the Milky Way. We're very far from the core. So if you went east from Earth, 36 Ganges rivers, each world like a speck of sand, you might come to the axis of the universe, our universe at any rate, our galaxy at any rate, which is just like a speck of dust in the universe. But there's something scarily literal about this in terms of current astrophysics. Hakuin says, though, what it's really talking about is mind states. 36 Ganges rivers sands worth of mind states right now, under whatever mind states you're experiencing, whatever thoughts you're having, whatever is going on in your mind, there is right now the core of the universe, the center of everything. This is Mount Sumeru shape. That world is right here. It's not so far away. Under every mind state, every thought you're having at this very moment, the core of the universe is right there. That's what Hakuin is pointing to in this line. The Buddha of that world, Sumeru shape, is named Sumeru Lamp King. And he is there now, says Vimalakirti. He is there now. Or she is there now. Not in the future. Not when you traverse all 36 Ganges river sands worth of mind states, but right now. Sumeru, Lamp King, the Buddha, is right there. This Buddha's body, says Vimalakirti, is 84,000 yojanas in height. Empire State Building. And the lion seat he sits on is 84,000 yojanas high and adorned in the finest fashion. The rich man Vimalakirti then exercised his transcendental powers, and at once the Buddha dispatched 32,000 lion seats. That Buddha of that world dispatched 32,000 lion seats, tall, broad, adorned, and pure, and had them brought into Vimalakirti's room, where the Bodhisattvas, major disciples, Indras, Brahmas, 4 heavenly kings, and the others saw something they had never seen before. The room was broad and spacious enough to hold all these 32,000 lion seats without the slightest crowding or hindrance. The city of Vaishali and Jambudvipa, Rose Apple Land, the continent of India, and the other of the 4 continents, too, seemed in no way cramped or inconvenienced, but all appeared just as usual. So that other world is not so far away. Suddenly, all those many thousand, 32,000 giant lion seats can appear right here. Vimalakirti's room is no bigger than this Zendo. Yet a crowd of thousands of Indras, kings of the gods, Brahmas, gods, high gods, disciples, bodhisattvas, ordinary practitioners, all are seated there, and now 32,000 seats, giant seats, adorned like lion thrones, are in that room too, and everything fits. How could that be? How could everything fit in one little room? How could the world fit right where we are? We're getting very much into the territory of actual Zen. At that time, Vimalakirti said to Manjushri, "Sit down in one of these lion seats." The bodhisattvas and other distinguished persons should also sit down, but when they do so, they should assume bodies suitable to the size of the seat. We should accord with the circumstances of our life. Sometimes we sit in big seats. Sometimes we sit in little seats. Ultimately, there's no difference if we don't start distinguishing in our minds. The bodhisattvas who had acquired transcendental powers thereupon immediately transformed their shapes, making themselves 42 yojanas tall, and sat down in the lion seats. But among the bodhisattvas who had newly embarked on their course, that is their practice, or the major disciples, there were none who could climb up into the seats. At that time, Vimalakirti said to Shariputra, "Sit down in a lion's seat." I don't know if you know the term unsui. It's a Japanese term for a Zen monk. Unsui means clouds and water. That is, someone who's practicing is constantly reforming according to causes and conditions. The way clouds reform as the wind shifts them and moisture densities change, or as water flows through large containers or small containers over rocky ground or smooth ground. Water constantly has no impediment. It stays water, but it keeps changing. It doesn't stay in one shape. Vimalakirti is saying we have that power to accord with the circumstances of our life if we don't start stepping back and adding mental constrictions to what's possible or impossible. So, he says to Shariputra, sit down in a lion seat. But Shariputra said, Layman, these seats are too tall and wide. We can't climb up in them. That is, his mind is stuck in size and form and conditioned things. Exactly what Vimalakirti had warned against. Vimalakirti said, Shariputra. Remember, Shariputra is one of the great disciples of the Buddha. So right here, the sutra is already beginning to poke fun at the whole concept of hierarchy in Buddhism, that somehow the monks would be greater than a layperson. It's poking right at that, one of the real underpinnings of what's essentially been a monastic practice for, a long time. That's how it got transmitted to us, and yet right here, at the beginning, the sutra calls that into question. For Vimalakirti says, Shariputra, if you will make obeisance to the thus come one, that is the Tathagata, the Buddha, Sumeru, lamp king, then you'll be able to take a seat. The bodhisattvas who had newly embarked on their practice, and the major disciples, accordingly, made obeisance to the thus come one, Sumeru, lamp king, that is, to what's there right now, beyond all those mind states, before all those mind states, the one having all those mind states, as many as the sands of 36 Ganges River, that is endless flow of thought after thought. A sense of me in here, you out there, again and again, rebuilt every second. They made obeisance to the Sumeru lamp king, that is the center of the universe, illuminated king, the glowing core of everything. That's right here, right now, is what Vimalakirti says. Once they drop their limited views, their self-centeredness in relation to that profound, lit, central axis of the universe core, why then, they're able to seat themselves in the lion seats. Sariputra said, Layman, I've never seen such a thing. A little room like this, and still it can hold seats as tall as and broad as these, and the city of Vaishali is in no way crowded or obstructed, nor any of the towns or villages of Jambudvipa, Rose Apple Land, essentially the continent of India, or the other at the time, or of the other of the four continents, cramped or inconvenienced, or the palaces of the heavenly beings, dragon kings and spirits. So remember also when listening to Teisho to try and sit in a zazen posture. One's hands should also be in zazen posture if possible, and take it in just as if it's sounds. Don't cogitate on a thing, be present with it. Be fully present with it. Make listening your practice. If you're not working on a koan, make listening your practice. Drop counting, one could experience breath, let it in. Just let the words become your mind. Don't need to think about them. If you find that working on a koan and listening gets separative, then put all your attention just into the listening. Be complete with it. It is a form of zazen, listening to Teisho. One shouldn't be looking around. Sit upright as best you can. If you need to change posture, do so. Don't hesitate. That's fine. Just do it quietly and do your best to make it a form of zazen, listening zazen. Vimalakirti said, Shariputra, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have an emancipation that is called beyond comprehension. When a bodhisattva dwells in this emancipation, he can take something as tall and broad as Mount Sumeru and put it inside a mustard seed without enlarging one or shrinking the other. And Mount Sumeru, king of mountains, will still have its original shape. Moreover, the 4 heavenly kings and the gods of the heaven of the 33 who live on Mount Sumeru will not even know or realize where they have gone to, that is inside a mustard seed. Only those destined for enlightenment will be able to see that Sumeru has been put inside a mustard seed. This is called dwelling in the doctrine of the emancipation beyond comprehension. Beyond comprehension. Or again, this bodhisattva can take the waters of the 4 great oceans and pour them into the opening that holds a single hair, that is a pore, in his skin. Without the fish, turtles, sea turtles, lizards, or other sea creatures being in any way troubled, and those great seas will still have their original form. How can that be? You can pour all the great oceans of the world into a single pore of his skin? Maybe that's reality right now. This is Dharmakaya. Absolute nature, absolute truth. All our normal sense of things, all our conditioned sense of things, it's all thrown out with Dharmakaya. It's so much vaster, so much more present. You can pour all the oceans of the world into one pore of your skin, and the great seas will still be those great seas in their original form. And the dragons, spirits, asuras, and others who live in the sea will not know or realize where they've gone to, and these beings will not be at all troubled. Or again, Shariputra, this bodhisattva who dwells in the emancipation beyond comprehension, can slice off the 1,000,000,000-fold world that is a galaxy, grasp it in the palm of his right hand like a potter's wheel. How'd they know it was shaped like that? Like a potter's wheel, and toss it beyond worlds numerous as the sands of the Ganges. And the beings in that world will not know or realize where they've got to. The bodhisattva can then bring it back and put it in its original place. And none of the people will have any idea that they have gone somewhere and come back, and the world will still have the same shape as before. Now, I'm going to read to you koan number 62, Hekiganroku. Hekiganroku is the second book of koans. After first we do first gate koans, which are mu, sound of a single hand. And then we work on 50 assorted, plus there are parts to each, so it's quite a bit more than 50, so-called introductory koans in our tradition, our lineage. Then we work on the gateless barrier, gateless gate, the Mu Man Kan or Wu Men Quan in Chinese. And then we work on the Hekigan Roku, Blue Cliff record, which is quite poetic, very interesting, very subtle. Then there's 2 more books of koans and some other, not a book, but some other koan aspects that we work on after that. But in Hekigan Roku, which is in Chinese is Pi Yen Lu, case 62 goes like this. Yunmen's one treasure, Umman in Japanese. Yunmen said to the assembled monks, between heaven and earth, through space and time, there is one treasure hidden in the mountain of form. Some translations say hidden in the body. Pick up a lamp and go into the Buddha hall. Take the temple gate and place it on the lamp. This is the same realm that Vimalakirti is talking about in his wonderful Teisho on the state of beyond comprehension, or the realization that is beyond comprehension, or as he says, the emancipation that is beyond comprehension. We do this in actual koan practice. We have to take the temple gate and put it on a lamp. This is Yunmen. He's really good at doing stuff like that and getting us to do it. So there's this Zen view right here in the original date of the sutra was probably around 100 AD, translated into Chinese from the Sanskrit probably around 500 or 600. So again, Shariputra, suppose there are beings who want to live in this world for a long time, but are qualified to enter enlightenment. He means full enlightenment, nirvana, right now. This bodhisattva can stretch 7 days into a kalpa, so that to those beings, they really seem like a whole kalpa. If you've ever been in a 7-day sesshin, maybe you've experienced that. You're there for 7 days, but it seems like you're there for eternity. Sometimes in the middle of sesshin, that can be a very discouraging thought. I've got 3 more days of this. I don't know if I can do it. It's like a kalpa. It goes on forever. Yet, somehow we do. We find, my gosh, it's only been 7 days. How'd that happen? Or if there are beings who do not want to live in this world for long and they are qualified to enter enlightenment, this bodhisattva can squeeze a kalpa into 7 days, so that to those beings it seems like only 7 days. How long is a kalpa? Let me describe the traditional image for a kalpa. The kalpa is said to be like this. There's a mountain, high as Mount Everest, let's say. Once every 100 years, a deva, that is a being of a higher realm, flies down towards this earth. And with the sleeve of their robe, they happen to brush the top of Mount Everest once every 100 years. A kalpa is the length of time it would take for Mount Everest to be worn down to the ground. That's one kalpa. Again, pretty amazing that we're talking about 2,000 years ago. This is the kind of metaphoric thinking that people could already do. Vast states, conditions, vast awareness of geologic time implicit in that. Anyway, again, Shariputra, the bodhisattva who dwells in the emancipation beyond comprehension, can take the magnificent adornments from all the Buddha lands, all the worlds, gather them together and show them to the beings living in just one country. Or this bodhisattva can place all the beings of a single Buddha land, a world, in the palm of his right hand and fly with them all around the 10 directions, showing them everything, and yet never move from his original spot. Or Shariputra, this bodhisattva can take all the objects offered to the Buddhas by the beings in all the worlds in the 10 directions and make them visible within a pore that holds a single hair, or take all the suns, moons, stars, and constellations that belong to the worlds in the 10 directions and make them visible within the pore of a single hair. Or Shariputra, he can suck into his mouth all the winds from the worlds in the 10 directions without doing any harm to himself or breaking down the trees that grow there. Or when the worlds in the 10 directions come to the end of the kalpa and everything is destroyed by fire, he can take all those fires and hold them in his belly. And though the fires go on burning as before, the bodhisattva suffers no harm. Or he can go down to the lower regions, past Buddha lands numerous as the sands of the Ganges, pick up one Buddha land, a world, lift it to the upper region, above Buddha lands, numerous as the sands of the Ganges, as one would lift the leaf of a jujube tree on the point of a needle, and that land will be in no way troubled. Or Shariputra, the bodhisattva who dwells in the emancipation beyond comprehension can use his transcendental powers to make himself appear in the body of a Buddha, or the body of a Pratyeka Buddha, or that of a voice hearer, an Indra, a Brahma king, one of the four heavenly kings, or a wheel-turning king. Or again, he can take all the voices uttered by the beings in the worlds of the 10 directions, high, middle, and low-grade sounds, and transform them all into the voice of the Buddha. He can make these voices discourse with the sounds of impermanence, suffering, emptiness, or non-ego, or expound all the various other doctrines preached by the Buddhas of the 10 directions, and cause these doctrines to be heard everywhere. So much of Chinese poetry and Zen poetry says exactly this, but in a very ordinary way. Listen to the sound of the wind in the trees. Listen to the caw of a crow. Listen to the meow of a cat. Arf of a dog. The splash of water as you wash your hands. This is saying impermanence, emptiness, non-ego. This is the voice of the Buddha. It's right here. This is Vimalakirti's point again and again and again. And this is right at the beginning of Buddhism. And people think that somehow Zen is a later addition. No. This is there from the beginning. And I'm not even saying it's Zen. It's just, this is the Buddha's teaching. Shariputra, I've just now briefly described the powers possessed by this bodhisattva of the emancipation beyond comprehension. If I were to describe them in full, I could go on for the whole kalpa and never be done. At that time, Mahakashapa, hearing this discourse on the doctrine of the emancipation beyond comprehension, sighed at encountering what he had never heard before, and said to Shariputra, "It's like a man, like someone displaying various painted images before a blind man when he cannot see them. In the same way, when we voice hearers, that is, disciples of the Buddha who depend on what the Buddha's teaching is, who haven't realized that same mind as deeply as the Buddha for themselves, which is all of us, we're all incapable of understanding it. If wise persons hear it, there will be none who do not set their minds on attaining Anyuttara Samyak Sambodhi. But what of us?" And he's now talking about the disciples who have gained some insight into emptiness and they get stuck there. They think, "Oh, I got it. I don't have to work on compassion or wisdom or anything else. I've seen it's all empty." And they're very high state, and yet they're stuck. He says that's who we are. But what of us who are forever cut off at the root, who with regard to these great vehicle teachings that is saying very much the Arhat path, the path so-called the elders, the Theravadan path. Again, there's always religious politics involved in one way or another. But his point, Mahakashapa, one of the great disciples, is there's more. There's always more. Wherever we've settled down, it's not yet enough. We can go further. So what he says is, in regard to these great vehicle teachings of Vimalakirti, what we've got is like a rotten seed. When voice hearers like us hear this doctrine of the emancipation beyond comprehension, we'll surely cry out in anguish, in voices loud enough to shake the whole 1,000,000,000-fold world, the galaxy. But bodhisattvas should all accept this teaching with great joy and thanksgiving. That is, those of us on the path of the Mahayana see this as our true home. These are teachings that restore us to where we really want to go, where we really know we can get to. Wisdom and compassion beyond comprehension. For if there are bodhisattvas who put faith. You don't have to go, "Oh, I couldn't realize it right away," but to put faith in this doctrine of the emancipation beyond comprehension, then none of the host of Maras can do anything to them. When Mahakashapa spoke these words, 32,000 offspring of the gods set their minds on the attainment of Anyuttara Samyak Sambodhi, that is perfect, complete, whole enlightenment, realization of our own nature. He says, any wise person who hears these teachings of Vimalakirti will arouse in themselves an aspiration to go all the way, to not be content with small accomplishments in practice, but to go all the way, to realize their own mind and be of benefit to all beings. At that time, Vimalakirti said to Mahakashapa, Sir, among those who play the part of Mara kings in the immeasurable asamkhayas of worlds in the 10 directions, that is, through the billions of galaxies, the billions of worlds in this galaxy, there are many who are in fact bodhisattvas, that is, Maras, supposedly the Buddhist distractor, the tempter, the devil. They're really bodhisattvas, many of them, dwelling in the emancipation beyond comprehension. They employ their skill in expedient means to teach and convert living beings by appearing in the guise of Maras. Or again, Kashapa, coming to the very end of this, or again, Kashapa, with regard to the immeasurable numbers of bodhisattvas in the 10 directions. Never think we're alone, is what he's saying. Throughout the endless universe, there are countless bodhisattvas, all working on realization of mind, its innate wisdom and compassion. And this is the reality of the universe according to Buddhist tradition. They're endless bodhisattvas. Sometimes people come to them begging for a hand or a foot, an ear, a nose, a head, an eye, marrow or brains, blood, flesh, skin, bones, villages, towns, wives and children, men and women, servants, elephants, horses, carriages, or for gold, lapis lazuli, seashell, agate, coral, amber, pearls, agate shell, clothing, food or drink. Many of those who beg in this fashion are bodhisattvas who dwell in the emancipation beyond comprehension. Those who ask us for things that are hard for us to give may be bodhisattvas, helping us to evolve further. Also, if you know the Jataka tales, which we look at again and again in the Zendo, many of them deal with the tests of the bodhisattva to give, like the hungry tigress Jataka, which the Buddha sees a starving tigress about to devour her own cubs. There's nothing at hand, so he gives himself. Maybe that tigress was a bodhisattva, very advanced, taking that form of suffering to bring forth the best of the bodhisattva Shakyamuni on the path. They employ their skill in expedient means and go to the other bodhisattvas to test them and make sure they are firm in their resolve. How can they do this? Because the bodhisattvas who dwell in the emancipation beyond comprehension possess powers of authority and virtue that enable them to importune others and make them perform difficult feats in this manner. Ordinary persons of inferior type have no such powers, and hence, forget inferior type, ordinary persons have no such powers, and hence cannot importune others as these bodhisattvas do. They are like donkeys who cannot stand up before the kicking and trampling of dragons or elephants. This is what is called the wisdom and expedient means possessed by bodhisattvas who dwell in the emancipation beyond comprehension. So we'll stop there and recite our own bodhisattva vows.